So having pointed out that many of the seemingly reasonable beliefs that his audience holds, these individual beliefs, don't rest on any rational foundation, James then pushes the thing to its, and pushes the thing deeper. I mean, um, it's one thing to believe in molecules, the conservation of energy, and the Monroe Doctrine, but what are our deepest beliefs? Well, uh, and that is, how far does this go in terms of our volitional reasons, if you could call them, that are sort of non-intellectual reasons for believing what we believe. Well, how about the belief in truth itself, the possibility of truth? So there on the bottom of page 9, he says, our belief in truth itself, for instance, that there is a truth, and that our minds and it are made for each other. What is it but a passionate affirmation of desire in which our social system backs us up? We want to have a truth. We want to believe that our experiments and studies and discussions must put us in a continually better and better position towards it. And on this line, we agree to fight out our thinking lives. That is, if we think all the way back to the Meno, and Meno's question about the possibility of inquiry, and Socrates' response to him. Socrates offers a kind of material response to Meno with this theory of recollection, but he doesn't offer a criterion of truth to Meno that we could use, actually. So what is it that Socrates is saying to Meno? It's really worth continuing to search for the truth. We can find it, even if we don't know right now exactly how we'll be able to recognize the truth when we find it. We can do it. It's worthwhile. This seems to me to be a perfect example of what James is talking about. Our belief that we can be put in a continually better and better position towards it, towards knowledge, towards truth, towards our grasp of reality, seems to be at the very heart of what Socrates is, what is prompting him to urge Meno to, well, yeah, the objection, yeah, whatever, but we can still find truth. Even Sextus Empiricus, and maybe this is a certain bit of either technical, there's a technical reason for him claiming this, and maybe not, but even he claims that he is part of the school that says we have not found the criterion of truth, but we keep on searching. That is, that it's worthwhile to keep on doing philosophy. James continues there, but if a Pyrrhonistic skeptic asks us how we know all this, can our logic find a reply? No, certainly it cannot. It is just one volition against another. That's pretty sobering. So when we realize that even our deep-seated belief that it's worthwhile to try to learn itself, an unfounded belief, at least intellectually, and that our motives for continuing to pursue anything like philosophy, and of course philosophy doesn't just mean what we're doing here or what the philosophers do in the schools, but just life in terms of believing that we can gain truth about the things that we care about. James is saying it doesn't rest on any rational foundation at all. It's a live, genuine option for us, but it may be that it rests on volition, desire, more than anything else. And it is, he really pushes this line about our inability to justify in an intellectual way our pursuit of truth, because we have no criterion of truth, which is a very deep question, of course, for us. What do we know? Well, here, if we look at the bottom of page 14 and what ensues, we get to some familiar territory. He says, there is but one indefectibly certain truth, and that is the truth that Pyrrhonistic skepticism itself leaves standing. The truth that the present phenomenon of consciousness exists. And Sextus Empiricus would agree to this. Descartes would agree to this as a starting point. That what is left standing if I really subject my beliefs to skepticism, to intellectual rigor, ask for evidence? that the present phenomenon of consciousness exists, that my ideas exist, that the appearances exist for me. They are there, but, and that is Descartes' starting point. I think, I cannot help but experience the appearances of my mental life. And then the whole question is, of truth is, do those appearances, does that phenomenon of consciousness, to put it in James's terms, does it relate to anything else, to the world, to something beyond me, beyond my subjective experiences? He continues, that, however, is the bare starting point of knowledge, the mere admission of a stuff to be philosophized about. The various philosophies are but so many attempts at expressing what this stuff really is. How does my mental life, what is it, and how does it relate to anything else? And if we repair to our libraries, what disagreement do we discover? Where is a certainly true answer to be found? Apart from abstract propositions of comparison, such as 2 and 2 are the same as 4, propositions which tell us nothing by themselves about concrete reality, that is, we can agree that 2 and 2 are 4. But if that's a truth, that's a kind of a logical truth, is it not? That is a pure abstraction about the relations between numbers. It tells us nothing about concrete reality, that is, about the world independent of us, perhaps. And isn't that what we really want? We find no proposition ever regarded, if we talk about concrete reality, by anyone as evidently certain that has not either been called a falsehood or at least had its truth sincerely questioned by someone else. That is, we've seen a little bit of the history of philosophy, and we've seen how what could be taken for granted seemingly with assurance by one philosopher has been called into question sincerely by another. So what is the upshot of this? The next paragraph on page 15, no concrete test of what is really true has ever been agreed upon. What's the best that we have in terms of a concrete test of truth? Well, we don't have one. You know, he says on the bottom of page 13, he says, you believe in objective evidence, and I do. Of some things we feel that we are certain. We know, and we know that we do know. There is something that gives a click inside of us, a bell that strikes 12, when the hands of our mental clock have swept the dial and meet over the meridian hour. That is, we feel that sometimes we know, and that we know when we know, and that's because of some click. The click, oh yeah, the aha. Yes, this is true. But what is that click? First of all, it's a metaphor. Should we trust it? And secondly, isn't it merely a psychological phenomenon? Haven't we felt that click when later on we've changed our mind and decided that we were wrong before? He continues, the greatest empiricists among us are only empiricists on reflection. That is, sure, being an empiricist demanding evidence and experience for all our beliefs is something that we may hold, but that's something that we hold upon reflection of our experience and our beliefs rather than in action. When left to their instincts, they dogmatize like infallible popes. That is, we're all sort of speaking ex cathedra, pontificating, you might say, in our actions. We trust that click. But after all, it's only a click. The truth is, as he says again on page 15, no concrete test of what is really true has ever been agreed upon. He continues at the bottom of page 15 and ensuing on page 16, the much lauded objective evidence is never triumphantly there. It is a mere aspiration, or Grenzbegriff, a German for limit concept, this notion that we're moving towards the truth, we're getting closer and closer to it, marking the infinitely remote ideal of our thinking life. To claim that certain truths now possess it is simply to say that when you think them true, and they are true, then their evidence is objective. Otherwise, it is not. It's completely circular. Right? What are true beliefs? The ones that I believe in most strongly. Why do you believe in them most strongly? Because they're true. And how do you know they're true? Because I believe in them strongly, etc., etc. But practically, one's conviction that the evidence one goes by is of the real objective brand is only one more subjective opinion added to the lot. And here we may just say, why bother? I mean, don't you want to just throw up your hands in a way? I mean, I want to apologize for wasting your time for the past 6 weeks in this course. I guess. I mean, this is really a passionately argued skepticism. It's really, one may go different ways at this point. What's the point? I mean, if really the history of philosophy is just a history of people's subjective opinions, and reading another philosopher and even doing philosophy yourself is just throwing one more subjective opinion into this big barrel of unsubstantiated claims about reality. You may be driven to asking, what is the point of all this? And that's a very good question. And we should all ask ourselves, and we should ask ourselves, given how difficult philosophy actually is, wondering whether the effort is worth it. This is a really passionately argued skeptical position. And then the question is, what then do we do? And if we realize that there is no criterion of truth that we found, or maybe there isn't even one that we could possibly hope to find, is it worthwhile still to pursue truth, to do philosophy in the widest sense of seek truth in our lives about things that matter to us? One may certainly go in different directions, and that's what we'll talk about in the last talk. What is the direction that, having been driven to this point where a lot of allowance has been given to the strength of the skeptical position, what do we do in terms of our search for truth and how we regard our own beliefs and the possibility of doing philosophy? Well, this is William James, after all, who is so optimistic by nature that I can't imagine him falling into kind of a skeptical despair. How do we live our lives if we don't think that we have the truth, or that even that it's possible to find the absolute truth, because we don't have any criterion for it? We should remember that we've gotten some suggestions for that in past readings, and in the next talk we'll look both at James's response and perhaps think about the response of people like Sextus and Descartes.